The following will contain spoilers. Comparisons between stories that are done out of a desire to paint creators as unoriginal and dismiss their work are frustrating. It's not like creators ripping people off isn't a thing, but often these comparisons are overly simplified and ignore many of the nuances between similar ideas. One important distinction to make between series with similar ideas is the context surrounding those choices. So let's start with a story whose reputation has been tainted by this kind of discussion: fairy tale. Now obviously fairy tale has been criticized for many things, but one very reoccurring argument is its similarities to One Piece. Let's examine family. First off, it isn't a crime for series to explore the same ideas, because otherwise we are the person who invented friendship and apology.
You violated the law.
But let's take a close look at the way that these ideas are compared and criticized. Both the Straw Hats and Fairy Tail Guild put a large emphasis on their group being akin to a family, but Luffy constructs his family very differently. Luffy isn't the kind of person who wants to deal with a large crowd, and only really lets people in if there's someone who's willing to fight for their ambitions. But Fairy Tail is a home for anyone who wants to be a part of it, with no expectations put upon them. There are literal babies in this guild. People have criticized Fairy Tail's family for being too big and not being able to connect with them on the same level as the Straw Hats, but its size is reflective of how welcoming it is. If Fairy Tail's family was just a small group of people, it probably would have been accused of being a ripoff even more. Family is also something important to who Mashima is. Shocker, I know. Mashima grew up without a dad, and conflicts surrounding father figures show up in his work quite frequently. Natsu, Gray, Lucy, Loxus, and Kana all have conflicts tied to their father figures. So while Mashima is clearly taking lots of influence from One Piece, he's doing so in a way that remains relevant to topics he cares about. Context is important in showing how series craft different experiences, but sometimes stories end up unintentionally similar because they are inspired by the same outside sources. This is the case for Avatar: The Last Airbender and My Hero Academia. Please don't yell at me for the title. Horikoshi confirmed that Todoroki was not inspired by Zuko. As someone very open about his influences, there's no reason to believe he'd lie about this. These characters likely ended up similar because they are designed around the idea of fire. Fire is something that is seen as a symbol of passion and destruction. In Avatar, all the elements come with defining characteristics that are reflective of each nation. The Fire Nation's drive to dominate is an embodiment of these ideas. In My Hero Academia, quirks also heavily influence your personality, such as All For One's desire to steal quirks or Toga's desire to drink blood. Endeavor is no exception, as someone whose quirk influenced him to rise to the top. Ozai and Endeavor's passion forcing heavy expectations onto their families as a result. But in case this isn't convincing enough, we'll go over some other comparisons. Both Zuko and Todoroki have similar designs, personalities, and connections to their mother. First off, there are fire wielders with burns whose existence predates Zuko, and scars are often just a visual indicator of trauma. In Hiroaka, scars are very deliberate in how they convey a character's personality. Many of the antagonists have scars on their faces that make them look like monsters, and Twice's scar represents his split personality. Zuko and Todoroki's scars are designed in a similar fashion. Their scars look like fire and only take up half their face because it represents their inner conflict. Todoroki's scar shows his rejection of his father, while Zuko's scar represents the ugly side of him that does horrible things for his father's approval. But unlike Zuko, Todoroki is also designed around the idea of ice. His rejection of fire caused him to embody the negative extremes of ice, becoming cold and distant, freezing him in time, unable to move forward until his passion to be a hero is properly rekindled, melting away the ice that made him rigid and unstable. And his mom's ice is meant to embody how she isn't compatible with Endeavor. So looking at these ideas, it's clear to see why Todoroki was designed this way. Also, fire is literally the most generic elemental power, and characters that use it are bound to be similar. But I want to show that series choosing to be similar is something that can be highlighted as a good thing, especially if those influences are done with an understanding of why those choices were made in the first place. So let's look at series whose similarities are intentional. Dragon Ball is in many ways the most influential battle shonen, and it was a template for many that came after it. One clear example of this are shonen protagonists. Many of them are naive, love combat, are persistent, hyperactive, and overall childish. Goku was designed this way because his story was meant to appeal to children. Goku is childish, but this contrasts the parts of him that make him a badass. In this way, he could be a relatable power fantasy for that audience. But he was also meant to embody the ideas of his story. Dragon Ball is about about friendship and persistence. Goku's childlike, kind-hearted nature wins him the respect of many people he comes across. His persistence and love of combat also naturally provide the narrative with conflict, and shonen stories encourage ideas of empathy, optimism, and power. Many shonen protagonists choose to emulate Goku's personality to convey their own ideas. One Piece is about freedom, and Luffy's personality embodies these themes: his refusal to back down to authority, his curiosity that drives him to adventure, and lack of care of what others find strange of him. With Naruto, his naivety left him unable to relate to Sasuke, but his persistence to grow led him to have a more nuanced understanding of his friend and how the world influenced his choices, communicating his story's ideas about empathy and connection. While there were still some differences, these stories benefited from the protagonist's similar personality traits. They showed a clear understanding of how to utilize these ideas to benefit their narratives. It's unfair to accuse authors of unoriginality because of surface-level parallels without examining the meaning behind these choices. Thank you for watching.
If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving me a like and comment so that I know to make more videos like it in the future. Also consider sharing my work on social media with hashtags like Shonen Jump. Your support is greatly appreciated.
You violated the law.